Tom long enough to get. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Natural Resource Committee. I'm Senator Bruce Bostelman from Brainerd, representing the 23rd Legislative District, and I serve as chairman of the committee. The committee will take up the bill in the order posted. This public hearing today is your opportunity to be a part of the legislative process and to express your position on the proposed legislation before us. If you are planning to testify today, please fill out one of the green testifier sheets that are on the table at the back of the room. Be sure to print clearly and fill it out completely. When it's your turn to come forward to testify, give the testifier sheet to the page or the committee clerk. If you do not wish to testify but would like to indicate your position on a bill, there are also white sign-in sheets on the back table. These sheets will be included as an exhibit in the official hearing record. When you come up to testify, please speak clearly into the microphone. Tell us your name and spell your first and last name to ensure we get an accurate record. We will begin each bill hearing today with the introducer's opening statement, followed by proponents of the bill, then opponents, and finally by anyone speaking in the neutral capacity. We will finish with a closing statement by the introducer if they wish to give one. We will be using a 5-minute light system for all testifiers. When you begin your testimony, the light on the table will be green. When the yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute remaining, and the red light indicates you need to wrap it up and wrap up your thoughts and stop. Questions from the committee may follow. Also, committee members may come and go during the hearing. This has nothing to do with the importance of the bills being heard. It is just part of the process of senators may have bills to introduce in other committees. Few final items to facilitate today's hearing. If you have handouts or copies of your testimony, please bring up at least 10 copies and give them to the page. Please silence or turn off your cell phones. Verbal outbursts or applause are not permitted in the hearing room. Such behavior may be cause for you to be asked to leave the hearing. Finally, committee procedures for all committees state that written position letters to be included in the record must be submitted by 12 noon the last business day before the scheduled hearing on that particular bill. The only acceptable method of submission is via the legislature's website at nebraskalegislature.gov. You may submit a written letter for the record or testify in person at the hearing, not both. Written position letters will be included in the official hearing record, but only those testifying in person before the committee will be included on the committee statement. I will now have the committee members with us today introduce themselves, starting on my far left.
Good afternoon. I'm John Frederickson. I represent District 20 in Central West Omaha.
Julie Sloman, District 1, Otoe Johnson, Nemaha, Pawnee, and Richardson counties.
Shanna Hughes, District 24, Seward, York, Polk, and a little bit of Butler County.
My far right.
Senator Tom Brandt, District 32, Fillmore, Thayer, Jefferson, Saline, and southwestern Lancaster counties.
I'm Senator Mike Jacobson. I represent Lincoln, Logan, McPherson, Thomas, Hooker, and 3/4 Perkins County.
John Kavanaugh, District 9, Midtown Omaha.
Mike Moser, District 22. It's Platte County and parts of Stanton County.
Sir Moser also serves as vice chair of the committee. Also assisting the committee today to my left is our legal counsel, Cindy Lamb, and to my far right is our committee clerk, Lori Wollertson. Our pages for the committee this afternoon are Trent Kadavi and Landon Tunde. With that, thank you both for being here today. And with that, we'll begin today's hearing with LB 456. Welcome, Senator Brewer.
Thank you, Chairman Bostelman, and good afternoon, fellow senators of the Natural Resource Committee. I'm Senator Tom Brewer. For the record, that is TOMBREWER. I represent 11 counties in the 43rd Legislative District of Western Nebraska. I'm here today to introduce LB 456. I'm introducing this bill on behalf of the farmers and ranchers in my district. I have modified this bill after Wyoming's law that sets up a system to reimburse landowners for losses caused by wildlife. We do not have a law like this in Nebraska right now. So you'll see that there are a number of pages of new language in the bill. I modified what Wyoming has on their law because we needed an example of something to work off of that is proven and is similar to Nebraska. I thought I would limit the scope of this bill to just 2 animals, the elk and the mountain lion. Once the laws are enacted and we work through some of these growing pains of game and parks, or the legislature decide that there are additional animals that need to be added, no problem. That's kind of the process we'll need to go through. Now, had I taken Colorado's law, that would have included a lot more animals. So they're compensating their folks for bighorn sheep, black bears, moose, elk, mountain goats, mountain lions, mule deer, pronghorn, the white-tailed deer, wolf. Now, obviously, we don't have a lot of those animals here. The point being, other states have set up a system to compensate their landowners. In addition to Wyoming, Kansas, Missouri, South Dakota, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and others. So this isn't like we're reinventing the wheel here. This is just simply taking Nebraska landowners that have lost resources because of wildlife. Now, I think the part of this that you really need to focus on, and that's a real eye opener too, is if you look at the fiscal note, it's $9.3 million to reimburse landowners from what they suffer from 2 species of animals. So imagine had we added any more, what that price tag would be. I want the committee to really let that soak in. To perform this function of government takes nearly $10 million. Requires that we hire 22 full-time state employees. For the new senators, what you see in this with this bill is simply death by fiscal note. This is where a state agency, the executive branch, comes into the legislature, tells our separate and independent branch of state government that they do not like the will of the people who elected us. How else do you see this? We do not want to be forced to do something. So this ridiculous fiscal note, or they don't want to be forced to do this, this ridiculous fiscal note can essentially kill the bill unless we can figure out where to come up with $10 million. Now, stop and pause for a moment. It was just yesterday I was in here presenting the Pheasant Restoration Act. And we were told that there is no value added to the eliminating of predators. And they were able to affect that bill by a very similar technique. The problem that I'm facing in my district is a herd of elk, and I'll be anxious, and hopefully someone here ask how many elk we have in Nebraska. And how many do we hunt every year? And how many cow elk are there? And how many calves are there each year? And then start crunching the numbers to figure out why this population has exploded. Now, I understand Game and Parks makes money on elk, and that's great. All I'm saying is, if we're going to have these herds, or in the case of lions, numbers expand so fast with little accountability as far as the negative impact they have on the people that have to exist with them, then shame on us. Because we're taking in this case, a game animal, and we're making money by selling permits, licenses, and then not doing anything to compensate the landowner for the losses. Now, there's a lot of theories on what that should look like. And then I think, Wyoming has had experience with this and has been fairly successful. Elk love spring wheat. If you haven't seen what they can do to a field in a day, especially some of these bigger herds, and we have some pretty major herds, 200 to 300. They're hard on cornfields. They love to come into a cornfield in the fall before it's picked and just dismantle it to get into a stackled yard. And once they tromp on the hay, the cattle don't want to eat it. So now you have what you had set aside with what other wealth you have in the world for winter as your reserve, and it's ruined because of the elk coming in and doing what they're doing. How is that fair to the landowner? We don't have a system to compensate them. We got to come up with one. This is the conduit to do that. Now, on the mountain lion side of things, again, I don't think we have a clue how many we have. I think it's all guesses. We've got a lot of great biologists out there, but these biologists are the same ones that aren't releasing pheasants like we should be and don't want to hunt predators because there's no effect of hunting predators. But if there's no positive effect to hunting predators, why are we hunting lions? To keep the population down. So why wouldn't you hunt coyotes to keep the population down? You can't have it both ways. So they were just in here yesterday saying that doesn't work. So I'll be anxious to hear about the mountain lions and why we think selling permits for them and hunting them somehow reduces that population. What you got to understand is that mountain lion population is getting to the point where it's out of control. How do I know this? Well, it just happens my nephew is a government trapper, and he has to deal with this. And so he goes to locations where they've had mountain lions attacking animals and has to make an assessment. Now, his ideas or thoughts or information he's collected means nothing to Game and Parks. They have their biologists come over and say that's a coyote kill, not a mountain lion kill, or that's a bobcat kill. There's always an excuse that it's not a mountain lion. So a couple of months ago, he sat on a site where they had been losing animals and waited, using a thermal scope, shot and killed a lion to prove a point. Now, sometimes biologists are very valuable. Don't mean to say that they don't, but sometimes if you live there and you deal with it, your ability to look at tracks and see what's going on is a lot more realistic than a biologist out of Lincoln. Now, I have video of this lion in the process of killing an animal and then being shot, and I will share that with anybody here that wants it. The point, again, is that we have to do something to compensate these landowners. They're losing horses, they're losing cattle, they're losing goats, they're losing sheep. It's easy to just poo-poo it and say, well, you know what? We'll give you an elk permit to compensate you for this loss. But in the end, that's not how we should do it. There should be a system. There should be a set compensation you get for whatever damage is done to your property. And that's what this bill is about. So I will be open for questions.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Question, Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Chairman Bossman. Thank you, Senator Brewer, for bringing this bill. You raise a whole host of questions. So, and I'll ask my fellow senators this because I didn't bring my note in from this morning, but this morning we discussed a bill to increase all of the out-of-state permits by a significant number, and it generated millions of dollars. I can't tell you how many millions, but I think it's enough to cover a program such as this, which makes absolute sense because you're using out-of-state hunters to provide a revenue stream to indemnify our farmers and ranchers out there. Going through the multiple fiscal notes on the back of this, did you see the one from the AG's office?
I may have missed that one.
Oh, okay. So the AG's office is adding 8 attorneys for $247,000. That's quite a deal. Those attorneys work pretty cheap over there. I mean,
Yep, sure enough, $247,370.
compared to the 20 biologists at the other agency, that one, you know, an attorney, we got to hire more attorneys and less biologists. So claims only increase. So does this bill cover depredation hunters? Or are we just worried about compensation to indemnify losses?
Losses. And I think as we look at this, we probably want to make sure that we look at the issue of whether or not that landowner, if they are selling the rights to hunt on that land, then I think they forego any compensation from the state for damages.
I would agree with that. Something I hear from my hunters in southeast Nebraska, they desperately want an elk permit. They get into the lottery and then they hear, oh, they're doing this depredation hunt on a ranch, but then this guy won't let them come in and hunt because he's selling those rights to hunt. So I applaud you for that. I think, I don't often say this because I don't like third-party contractors when the state of Nebraska could do it, but I think this is the kind of program where the state could hire a third-party agency to come in and manage this whole program. What are your feelings on that?
Well, it might be a reasonable solution because I don't believe you're ever going to get the level of honesty you want with biologists who, if what they have told us doesn't hold true, whether it be the number of animals or their effect on the environment, the damage to other animals, livestock, then I think it's always going to be slanted in their favor. And just the example I gave you with, they really have no desire to ever admit that a mountain lion's killed anything. And I don't think they really want to count the mountain lions very bad either, because at some point, if you count them and that number is pretty astronomical, and you have a program where once you kill your second female lion of the year, whatever that is, then the hunting season's over. You may kill 2 females and that's it for the season. Well, if there's 200 or 300 lions, which I think is a very low number, and half of them have a cub each year or 2, you can see how that number all of a sudden takes off to the point where you're never going to manage it right. And so they're going to get hit on the road. They're going to die of starvation. But sooner or later, you're going to have someone killed by a mountain lion. They will get hungry and they will go where they shouldn't go. And when that happens, then, Game and Parks is going to have some really, really hard questions to answer about their management.
And I know there's always been a problem with verification. In southeast Nebraska, I have seen a mountain lion. My neighbors have also visually seen mountain lions, but that doesn't count. It only counts if it's a state conservation officer or a state patrolman. And so what they advised us to do is take a 5-gallon bucket and put it over the print until their biologist can come out there and verify whether or not, even though, unfortunately I didn't have video of it, but a lot of my neighbors, they kind of know the difference between a mountain lion and a bobcat and a feral cat. So verification on a lot of this historically has been a problem. And the last thing I guess I would say, in southeast Nebraska, deer do a tremendous amount of damage to all of our cornfields. Anybody located along a waterway of any sort, a creek or a river, they eat a lot of corn off the edges of those fields. So with that, do you have something to add?
Well, I understand that had I put mule or whitetail deer on this list, that fiscal note would be probably closer to 100 million. And so I don't know that that's realistic that we can do that just because of what's going to result from a fiscal note for it.
All right, thank you.
Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for bringing this. So, newbie, what happens today? So that was my question, where our neck of the woods is deer cause issues and things like that. Just too bad, right? I mean, and so if this is an issue and elk decimate a whole field, what does that farmer do today?
Well, they can notify Game and Parks, but there's no system to compensate them. I think
Right.
in some cases,
Would your crop insurance maybe cover it?
I don't think crop insurance covers wildlife
I
losses.
don't
You might have to ask someone who has actually handled crop loss.
I'll have to ask my brother. So right now there's just nothing.
That's
The
correct.
farmer though, the elk are on their land, they could shoot them all if they wanted to.
No.
Because it's not in season. I thought if it's, but like a
No,
if
it's-
a mountain lion, or if a mountain lion gets on your property, you can only shoot if it's like coming after you. Or coming
Yeah,
after
if
a
it's in the
pet or
process of killing
a pet or
an
you,
animal
whatever.
or obviously a human, anything like that, then
Yeah.
yes, you can kill the animal. Now, you're going to probably come under a lot of scrutiny for that. You better, have a
Right.
real good case behind you for doing that. But no, just because an animal crosses your land, you've got no
Yeah,
authority
you're right.
to.
You're right. I knew that. Okay. Sorry. I'm just trying to
No,
get the
that's what
information.
we're here
Thank you.
Senator
for.
Frederickson.
Thank you, Chair Bossman. Thank you, Senator Brewer, for this bill. And I agree with you, Senator Brandt. That would be very affordable attorneys if that is the actual breakdown. I was curious, Senator Brewer, you mentioned kind of Wyoming and other states who have had similar programs as this. Do we have a sense of what the costs in those states would be, or what they're spending on this? Do we have any estimate on?
That is a great question. Why don't I work on that between now and close and see if I can't get you that number?
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, stay for close.
I need to give at least a shout out here. Yesterday, I said it would have been nice to have had the pheasant research, and I overnight got the pheasant research. So a shout out to Game and Parks. They reacted and they sent it, and I'm going through it now.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll stay for close.
Okay. Proponents for LB 456. Surprise, Senator Erdman.
Thank you, Senator Bossman. My name is Steve Erdman, Steverdman. I represent District 47. I couldn't pass up the opportunity to come here and share with you information that I think is vital to this bill. And that is the fact that I have a bill in appropriations that is $10 million a year appropriated from Game and Parks Cash Fund, and it could be used to pay for this $10 million in damages. 2 years ago, I introduced a bill to do $5 million a year. I got it out of appropriations unanimously. It was included in the budget, but I never got a bill out of this committee to do the distribution. So that's what this bill is. And so I would just share with you that the money will be there, so don't let them come and whine about it's not. So I seen an article this morning in our local, on my local radio station. It talked about Game and Parks is going to do an analysis, a study of elk. They're gonna work in hand with the University of Nebraska. Is going to cost them $831,000 federal money, and that study is going to run till 2028. And they're going to study elk movement and maybe figure out how many we have. They don't have a clue how many we have. And in that same article, it alluded to a study that had been done earlier, back from 1995 to 2002, to determine how many elk they had in the Pine Ridge area. And for the sake of not reading the whole thing, it went on to describe what they discovered. And they discovered, and their opinion was that in the Pine Ridge area, they could sustain 600 elk and not be economical damaging to the landowners. But at that time, they estimated there was 150 elk. And so from 2005 on, they had the study that said they could have 600. So if I were in Game and Parks, I would say we need to count these animals. And if they've gotten to 600, we need to do something about controlling them. Well, they're way past 600. And so Senator Brewer had alluded to the fact that they don't know how many there is. And so when Director Douglas was the head of Game and Parks, I asked him how many elk we had, and he said 2,500. And then I asked Assistant Director McCoy, and I think he told me 3,000. So if you do the math, so let's assume we have 3,000 head of elk statewide, and I think that number is probably 10 times greater than that. So 3,000, and they told me 60% are female. So I'm not a rocket scientist or actuarial like Senator Clements, but I can figure out that 60% of 3,000 is 1,800. And if 80% of those 1,800 have a calf, you're down around the 1,200 mark. And let's say 75% of those survive. All of a sudden, you got 1,000 more elk next year than you had last year. And they were giving out or selling 500 permits, and they do about a 60-70% success rate. So we shot 350, but we have 1,000 more, and every year it's the same way. And so they don't have a clue how many they have. And so I can never figure out how to manage something they can't measure. And so it really is a situation where they're guessing at how many they have and exactly what the mountain lions. I'm a Senator Brewer, but my main focus today is here to tell you we have the money, so don't let them scare you into not doing this. The other issue and Senator Brewer alluded to that in his comments about the fiscal note, is it is peculiar to me that we, the legislature, are supposed to make rules, pass laws and make statutes and tell these agencies what they're to do. And then we have Game and Parks come in here and tell us how to do our job. And as I said in my other comments earlier this morning, to have an agency come in and talk against a bill, be in opposition, is strange. And so we make the decisions and then they adhere to what we decide. But that's not the way Game and Parks works. But I wanted you to know about LB 744. It'll be in appropriations, and I have the utmost confidence that that bill is going to get out. Thank you.
Questions for Senator Erdman? The $10 million, is that from Game and Parks Cash Fund or from?
Yes,
general?
Game and Parks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Senator Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Chairman Bossman. Thank you, Senator Erdman, for being here.
You bet.
It's a passion project for you. And I remember my first session here learning these sorts of things, and I was shocked about the stuff you're talking about, that we have too many elk and we're not giving out permits. Why can't we give out it sounds like there's people who want to hunt and can't.
Well, one of the things that they'll tell you, they can't get access, and that very well could be true. There's a limit of access in some of those places. But the issue is, and it's difficult because you have one guy that wants elk and one guy that doesn't. They live next to each other. That's an issue as well. But there are things that they could do to limit the number of elk. And as I said, they've done a study before. They understand how many we should have. So if I had a document that said you can have 600 in the Pine Ridge area, and I seen that document and I said, this is the study, wouldn't you think that Game and Parks would try to figure out how many they have to see if they exceeded what they did before? Why'd they do the study? If you're going to do a study and you don't adhere to it, why do it? And so they're going to go till 28 doing another study. And what are they going to do with that information? The same idea with the old one, put it in file 13. So it's time for them to step up and try to say, hey, how many do we have? So they say, well, we can't count them because the trees are green or there's too many trees. How about thermal photographs? Find out how many there is. If you really wanted to find out how many there is, they could do that. But they're not interested, and they're surely not interested in finding how many mountain lions we got. All right? There's a lot of mountain lions, more than they say. And when Director Douglas was testifying in front of the committee, Senator Chambers was in the chair where you are, and he asked him, how many mountain lions we have? And he said, you mean in Pine Ridge, or what do you mean? And Senator Chambers said, have you ever not answered a question by talking in circles? How many mountain lions do we have in the state of Nebraska? Couldn't answer the question. They don't know how many they got. Senator Brett has mountain lions. Do they count those? I don't think so. Do they count on Pine Ridge? Maybe. But the issue is we have more than they say, and these are getting closer and closer to people. And Senator Brewer is exactly right. One of these days, somebody's child is going to be killed by a mountain lion, and they're going to say, well, I didn't know that was a mountain lion. And I know exactly what he's talking about. The goats that were killed, the Game and Parks guy said it was bobcat. Bobcats don't crush goats' heads, all right? And the guy seen the mountain lion the night before on his porch. So I'm pretty sure it was a mountain lion. I mean, the guy didn't make it up. But no, when the game warden shows up, oh, yeah, that's a bobcat. That's a pretty good sized bobcat. But when he shot him, he was a little bigger than that. So it just aggravates me. The Game and Parks comes in there and tells us how we should pass laws or what we should do.
Thank you.
Maybe you could tell. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you, Senator. Any other proponents for LB 456, please step forward. Proponents for L 456, seeing none. Anyone like to testify as an opponent, LB 456? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bostelman, members of the Natural Resource Committee. My name is Alicia Hardin. That's ALICIAHARDIN. I'm the Wildlife Division Administrator for the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. The commission is opposed to LB 456. Our commission and staff understand and are very well aware of the landowner concerns about wildlife damage caused by elk and mountain lions. The commission has been making strides in reducing the elk population with a 195% increase in antlerless permits since 2019, resulting in a 147% increase in antlerless harvest. That's given us a 15% reduction in the herd since 2020. Our state already has laws in place that allow livestock owners to kill mountain lions that are stalking, attacking, or consuming livestock. No prior notice to the commission or permit is required. The commission can also provide a 30-day permit to kill a depredating mountain lion if a carcass has been found that has been proven to have been killed by a mountain lion. And in most cases, the commission will use their expertise and equipment to kill the mountain lion on behalf of the livestock owner if that request is made. I would note that our depredation program manager will be following me to provide more information on the actions we've taken and continue to take for wildlife damage in Nebraska. In response to this bill, the ownership of wild animals is vested in the state and held in trust for the benefit of the citizens of the state. As such, the ownership is not a traditional property interest. Without defining the terms persons and property, this bill appears to cast a broad net of responsibility and requirements for the commission to pay for damage for any elk or any mountain lion to any person. With such a broad scope of potential costs were challenging to come to, so our fiscal note was confined mostly to the estimate of agricultural and livestock damage. Making payments for damage to landowners without getting reasonable access, I was happy to hear the senator mention that, for hunting, or having the landowners involved with the mitigation to reduce and manage the wildlife populations could perpetuate problems leading to year after year asks for money and really doesn't help with the underlying problem. There is no mention of where the funding would come from beyond coming from game funds or coming from cash funds. But if the payments were made from our sale of permits for hunting and fishing, it would constitute a diversion of license revenues and would render the commission ineligible for further participation in the wildlife sport, fish, and restoration programs, or WSFR. And like yesterday, that would be a loss of around $22.8 million a year. The second point in conflicts with the provisions of the WSFR program is in giving authority to counties, as stated in Section 2 of this bill, to manage elk and mountain lands with federal wildlife service agents. The proposed use of game fund or habitat fund dollars is also in direct conflicts with revised statutes 37-901 and 903. We also have technical questions and concerns about the bill. Under Section 2 of the bill, where it states the county may hire a wildlife service agent to control wild elk and mountain lands when they are causing significant damage, who would make the determination that there is significant damage, and what is significant damage? What's the definition of that? This control may also preclude hunting seasons for elk in some units and mountain lands, as population numbers would not be able to sustain additional harvests. This would impact thousands of interested sportsmen and women, including landowners that enjoy hunting or benefit from hunters on their property. If damage can already be claimed under an insurance policy, how would those damage payments be handled? Would this obligate the commission and the state to pay for the same damage as insurance companies? The bill sets no boundaries for replacement value, and each claim will take considerable amount of staff time to investigate and document in case it goes to arbitration. We're also concerned that the length of time allowed between when the damage occurs and when we are notified will make it difficult to substantiate damages and what caused them. It may be difficult to find it also may be difficult to find a reasoned and unbiased arbitrator that resides in the county where the damages occur, something also required of the bill. In conclusion, we strive for a balanced approach that engages the commission, landowners, and hunters in the solutions, as we are the stewards of the public's wildlife resources in the best long-term interest of all citizens and those resources. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. So I'll start with some questions. Do you have an idea of how many elk there are in the state?
Yes, we are using an estimation and using modeling based on what we have from known alive, minimum known alive in the elk population, and we think it's around 1,950 as of right now. That would be around 630 bulls, 877 cows, and 420 calves.
So are the elk, Senator Erdman had come up with an estimation of how many elk, how they reproduce and how they survive. What's the survival rate on a calf?
On the calves, we, excuse me. On the calves, I have to find my information here earlier, but on adult bulls and cows, it's around 90%, and there's about 45 calves born to every 100 cows. And then there's a pretty high survival, I think, for a lot of those. Yes. But there's a lot of immigration. What we've seen, we do have collars on some of our elk up in the northern part of the state. And we're seeing a lot of immigration in and out of South Dakota. So they move quite a bit as well.
So are there more concentrations of them in certain areas of the state?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
So in those areas, have you done increased licenses, and have you done anything on depredation?
We continue to do a lot of things for depredation. First of all, if a landowner has any concerns and has damage, as soon as they call us, we go out and we meet with them and we look at what they have going on their property. If it's during a hunting season, we try to encourage hunters to come out. If it's not during a hunting season and, we can't get them scared off or moved out, then we'll issue a damage control permit and allow them to take that animal. As far as other things that we've done last year, the legislature, was last year or the year before, the legislature approved the Earned Landowner Elk Program. That was a really nice addition. That actually encourages landowners to allow the general antlerless harvest of elk on their property. And for every 10 antlerless elk that are killed with general antlerless elk permits, they get a free earned landowner permit that they can use on their own property. So that was a nice addition and actually got some more access. We have increased our permits in every unit since 2019, especially the antlerless permits, to encourage that population reduction.
I want to question on mountain lions. I would think that once a mountain lion has a taste of a lamb, of a calf, of a colt, once, whether they killed that animal or not, if they come in and feed on that animal, they're going to come back looking for that, especially when they know that they're easy to take versus a deer or something like that. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I would say that in the 30 years that we've been doing livestock depredation investigations, we've had 9 incidents that we have found that have been depredation by a mountain lion. I think mountain lions like to find food that is much not as big as a cow or a calf. They like to stay away from people in general, and they're going to be more likely to feed on things like mule deer and porcupines and other native species.
But my question is that if there's a calf kill, whatever, it died in natural causes, it froze, winter, it froze, and that mountain lion comes and eats on that calf. Is it going to have more of a taste? Recognizes what that is, then they could be more prone to come back, whether they killed it or not. That gives that mountain lion that, I'll say, that taste for that animal, that they'll look for those because they are easy to take down. And we heard when we did we did hearings across the state a few years ago, and there was one rancher out there that they had a box canyon that they used to have their cattle and horses in. They don't go in anymore because when they go in, they would find an animal, I don't know if it was a calf, whatever, in a tree, because the mountain lions are back in there. So I guess my question is once they kill something, maybe it's a chicken, maybe it's a goat. Once they learn that, once they taste that, they're pretty apt to come back. So why wouldn't we take that animal out?
Well, and that's what our statutes allow and what we would be happy to help them with.
But I think what I've heard before was that when someone is on their place and they shoot an animal that's in their yard, that's in the pen, that when that happened, that person actually, I think Sarah Brewer kind of referred to it a little bit ago, a nephew, when they reported that they were then the conservation officer wanted to arrest them. So if we have a mountain lion in a goat pen or in a sheep pen, and there's been a lamb that's been killed before, and now the federal trapper comes in and shoots that animal when it's in that pen, and now they're going to be potentially in trouble. The sheriff did not arrest them. So I guess I'm a little concerned that we're not allowing our ranchers and farmers to harvest, take the animals when they're in danger.
The particular case that I think you're referring to is where I know we involved the senator's nephew. We did go out and we investigated and we agreed that it was a mountain lion harvest or mountain lion kill. And the landowner did not want us to help and did not want a 30-day permit. They requested that the USDA Wildlife Service agent do that. And so we said, okay, go ahead. And that was absolutely fine. There was no sheriff meeting anybody in that incident.
I think we may hear different closing from Senator Brewer on that. Thank you, I appreciate it. Other questions? Senator Brand.
Thank you, Chairman Bossman. Thank you, Ms. Harden, for your testimony. You gave the size of the elk herd. What is the size of the mountain lion herd?
So we do a count in the Pine Ridge. Mountain lions, being very elusive predators, are very hard to count. They like to stay very secretive. So we do have a a project that we do where we do a mark recapture, and our estimation of the mountain lions in the Pine Ridge is 33, and that's as of, I believe, 2021.
What about the rest of the state?
So the rest of the state, we have not done the mark recapture. We are currently working on that in the Niobrara Valley. We have currently 25 callers that are out, 14 in the Pine Ridge, 7 in the Niobrara, and 4 in the Wildcat Hills. And that's something that we use to help us with our estimations. So we'll go in, we actually use dogs that will hit on the scat of mountain lions. And then we're able to collect that scat, and we can look at DNA, and we can tell if they're individual animals or if they're the same animal. And that's how we use some of that along with our caller data to give us the mark recapture information to be able to give us a population estimate. But it is confined to certain areas that we're trying to do that in when we're doing our search. So we're able to do that mark recapture method. So that is the Pine Ridge for 33.
So then like central, eastern, and southeastern Nebraska, we have no idea what those numbers are.
We don't, but we know that there are animals, especially dispersing young males, that will travel a long distance, as you
Certainly.
probably saw in the news, the one that ended up in Illinois. So
Okay.
there's a lot of traveling that happens with these young males as they leave to find a new range for themselves.
So I farm, I've got cattle. I think something missing from the equation currently. Currently, a big round bale of hay in southeast Nebraska is going for $200. It's going for much more than that the further west you get because of the drought. I can't imagine what it would be like to have a herd of elk come in overnight into my hay yard, and I know what it would look like the next day. I know what these guys are up against. So we're looking not only at astronomical damage here, it's not easily replaced if you're in a drought area. There is no available hay to buy. You have to truck this in at $4 or $5 a mile for those maybe 28, 30 bales that you can get on that load. You, in your testimony, you said it was hard to determine the damage. I don't see it that way. Significant damage to me can be determined by a third party. Your county extension agent is an expert, maybe on the cattle losses. We have crop adjusters. We have thousands of those in the state of Nebraska that could come in and determine the damage or the value of that hay yard or other things that these elk decimate. Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree that there are some crop adjusters that could possibly help with some of the crop piece of it. And in our fiscal note, we talk about giving our staff that kind of training to be able to do some appraisals of the damage. I would say the bill said that, we were in charge of investigating. So whether that means a third party would be able to do that would be a good question, whether that would fall within the statutory authority of something like this bill. But I would say that if our staff were asked to do it, yeah, we would ask for them to have some more training on that piece of it.
So how many people apply for elk permits in the state of Nebraska, just in state every year?
About 69, well, I think it's about between 5,000 and 6,000.
And then how many do we award?
We're awarding around 970 permits.
So about 20%, would that be a fair guesstimate?
Yes.
And this is the last thing. So we hear, and I understand this, ranchers are tired of people hunting on their ground. They've got an elk problem. They don't want anybody hunting there, or maybe they lease this out for hunting. Because the state owns the wildlife.
We manage the wildlife for the people of the state.
In trust, yes, you manage it. Couldn't you manage to take some helicopters and herd these elk herds to public access areas where they could be hunted?
You want us to take a helicopter and move them across other people's land to a
I'm just
public area?
suggesting, is that
Okay.
is that a possibility to get the elk herds in position to be hunted?
I will answer it with this. It is very difficult to get them to move off of some of the places where they're at if they feel like they're safe.
Okay.
We've tried to take them out of areas where they are kind of embedded, and it is difficult to do sometimes.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you for your testimony.
Another question, Senator Jacobson.
I just have one quick question. I appreciate your testimony here today, and trust me, I do understand the difficulties that you can encounter, and I know you did do one of the first elk deprivation activities in Perkins County this year, and kind of the southern edge of, I guess, up next to Keith County. It was quite an adventure, and learned a lot. Obviously, you consider it to be a successful hunt. You could probably share the numbers, but there's a lot of players involved here, and a lot of opinions, and a lot of coordination, and you might just share what ultimately happened with that event, and how many elk were taken, and I think it ultimately ended up being a successful depredation, but it wasn't without a lot of angst along the way. So you might just share with the committee how that took place.
Yes, thank you, Senator. There is a little bit of history. There's been years of working with landowners in an area near Roscoe, Sutherland, part of Lincoln County, Keith County, and part of Perkins, where we were trying to get more hunters in to help reduce the herds that were causing damage in some of the center pivots in that area. And we were able to get some hunters out there, but just never enough. And so after having several meetings with these folks, we decided to institute our first special depredation season with elk. And we did it in July of this year. We did it during that time period to be able to keep the elk out of the fields from having them ever get in there and cause the damage to begin with. And we did it with hunters who were asking to be a part of the solution as well. And so we ended up bringing in about 200 odd hunters that came in. We told them they had to get access from the landowners. We made that very clear as they went in, and they ended up harvesting 8 elk. They harvested 8 elk in 1 month, what took us 6 months to harvest 5 or 6 elk in that same exact area with our normal seasons. And so because we were able to concentrate those hunters and get them out there and then help those landowners, we did not hear of any more depredation complaints following that, but we will continue to work with those landowners to make sure we can take care of any other issues that they have. We're also looking at reorganizing our elk units to try to push hunters into areas where we have trouble getting them to go, so that we can try to help alleviate some of that damage. There was nobody that trespassed, there were no fires started, and I know the landowners got a lot of phone calls, but I think it was a success in our terms. And that was another thing that that this committee helped pass through a couple of years ago.
Thank you.
Sir Hughes?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for coming. I'm guessing this is an issue in a lot of states.
Yes.
I've been hearing elk, or even down in Kansas, was kind of new to me. What are other states doing that you know of? I guess my question is, we've got this bill. Is there something that other states are doing that you're like, oh my gosh, if we could do this, that would help? I don't know. Fill me in that way.
Right. Yeah. I've looked at other states and what they've been doing with their programs, and we're always that state that's like in the middle of the East and West, right? And so a lot of the Eastern states, they don't pay for damage. They do a lot of the technical assistance. They help with damage control permits if it's needed, or kill permits, as some people call them. The Western states, some of them do pay for damage. And the senator brought up Wyoming, they do, and Colorado does. But they also require the landowners to either provide access, not charge access, or be a part of the mitigation process. And so they are being a part of that solution, along with getting paid for some of the damages. The last information I have was from a couple of years ago from Wyoming. They, I think, paid $1.5 million in damages, but they require the landowner to take the young and the young of the year, or at least that equivalent amount, so that there's no growth in the population in their area, and not charge for access. So again, they're a part of the solution to helping with that, with the depredation problems. Also keep in mind, Wyoming is making, just on elk permits alone, $11.1 million a year. We make in Nebraska $410,000. So I'll let that sink in. Colorado is like 56 point something million in elk permits.
Other questions?
Thank you.
I guess that circle back around to what you had said earlier. The cash funds are hunting and fishing permits. Is it sales tax on firearms, ammunition, and that?
That's the WISPR funds, or the Wildlife Sport Fish and Restoration Program. And that's what we talk about in our fiscal note. So the diversion of funds would be in a couple different ways. Losing authority for management of the wildlife species in the counties, that if we gave the counties control to make the decision on how many to kill, that would be giving up our authority of those species, which puts us in, not having authority over animals that you want us to help pay for. So that would be a diversion of funds there.
So other than giving up that authority for counties, is there other things that would, how much would you lose all those funds or
Yes.
just portion?
No, we would lose all 22.8 if we use cash funds, if we use our game, especially our game fund, because our hunting and fishing license dollars go into our game fund. And so even our fishery, so that we would lose all this sport, fish, and restoration dollars for fisheries. We would lose it for wildlife, for hunter education, for shooting sports, all of those things.
So that's the federal funds.
That would be the federal funds we would lose.
And that's at 22 million?
That's the 22.8 million, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you know, and I think in hearings we had before, and you mentioned before you work with landowners a little bit, do you know if there's any crop insurance, anything else that comes involved with this or not?
That's a good question. I don't believe that it pays for animal damage, but I'm not a crop insurance expert.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next opponent, please. LB 456. Afternoon.
Afternoon, Chairman Bosselman, members of the Natural Resource Committee. My name's Dusty Shelbitsky, DUSTY-SCHELBITZKI. I'm the Depredation Program Manager for the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. I am here to speak briefly about our depredation program and answer any questions you may have pertaining to depredation. In the spring of 2021, we created a depredation program, hiring of 3 permanent staff dedicated just to depredation, consisting of a program manager and 2 biologists stationed in Northwest Nebraska and Southwest, and currently we're budgeted for additional 1. Our depredation program relies strongly on the help from our dedicated staff across our agency statewide. The last 2 years, we have doubled our staff time dedicated to depredation. Over the last few years, we've greatly increased our depredation outreach to landowners across the state. In addition to increasing antlerless permits, we have increased number of landowner tags, created the urban landowner elk permits, and conducted our first elk depredation season, what was already stated. Recent elk landowner surveys have shown that our landowners who thought we had too many elk have actually decreased across the landscape. In conclusion, we work with landowners to reduce and mitigate damage using a variety of depredation response options and work to reduce wildlife populations through hunting. I'd be more than happy to take any questions you guys have at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. How many individuals do you have in the western part of the state working on depredation? Where are they at?
On working across the state, we use actually all of our
On the western side, specifically out west.
exact number on that. I'd have to get back to you on the exact number, but we utilize all of our wildlife biologists, additional staffs. We have 2 permanent ones are dedicated just to depredation out there on the western half. But needless to say, number of biologists out there off the top of my head would probably be close to 20 out in that range.
Okay. Other questions? Sir Brandt.
Thank you, Chairman Bosselman. You just do the elk or you do other species?
We handle all depredation on all game species.
So you're responsible for the entire state?
Yes, as a program.
Okay. So what is the worst damage you've ever seen caused by wildlife in the state?
Worst damage, for the most part, usually goes back to your agricultural related row type crops, especially in heavily populated areas where wildlife could coexist in the area where you have good habitats. It's probably where you see the most extensive damage.
I mean, are you talking crops? Are you talking damage to vehicles? I mean, what?
It would be crops, yes, row crops.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Jacobson.
Thank you, Chairman Bostelman. And Dusty, good to see you again. I appreciate the time you spent with me last summer and several on the staff to kind of understand what was going on in Perkins County in that first depredation event. Obviously, I had a lot of constituents asking a lot of questions about what was happening, and I was hearing a lot of, I thought, very good questions from them on what on earth is going on and what's happened. Be able to sit down with your group and got some pretty good answers as to why you were doing what you were doing. But I think at the end of the day, clearly what was happening there in Perkins County is you had a herd, as I understand it, of elk that had kind of split off. They were growing in numbers. This was not an area where typically elk hunters would want to go hunt elk because there weren't enough to justify going there. Then you're dealing with a landowner. Do people want to give access, not give access? But clearly damage was occurring, and I think it was largely crop acres. If you get a fairly large herd of elk, they can make a pretty big circle out there of just flattening all the corn. And as I understand it, also there had been reported some center pivot damage as well on some of the larger elk that were in the area. But at the end of the day, I think it was 8, if I'm not mistaken. What was your total number on that?
Yeah, so it was 8 total harvested.
Yeah. And then you also have the issue on the early harvest, depending on, there was a lot of questions about, and we heard about some of this the other day. You've got cows that have calves. Okay, then do you kill the cow? What about the calf? And so we went through all that piece and timing of all those things. So there's a lot of, and then you also got to figure out when are the elk in the cornfields and when are they in the canyons where they can't be located. And so there's a lot of pieces that go into that, as I understand, to really determine how to get these guys.
Yes, that is correct. There's a lot of moving parts that go along with that.
Yeah, and so it's complicated, but yet at the end of the day, a lot of it's still coming back to how can we really certify where the numbers are at, particularly in this area, but I suppose in the bobcats and mountain lions, and then what's the appropriate way to really try to manage it. But I guess I have an appreciation for the complication, and I guess I just appreciate hearing a little more of the details, how that works. And thanks.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson.
Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so now I've got more questions. The Perkins thing last summer, whatever it was. 8 doesn't sound like many to me. How many were in this off little side herd that was causing all the problems?
8's a pretty good number for out there. We're talking estimating for what we had for population out there using that area at the time is typically around 30 elk. So 8's a pretty big.
So there was 30.
percentage
So
at the time.
almost a third of them, not quite, but okay. Thanks. Sorry.
And a big part of that too is the mitigation too, putting that hunting pressure earlier out there, help keep those elk from establishing in those cornfields.
Okay, thank you.
So do you deal with, how are you notified and how quick of a response do you have? I mean, obviously, we're talking about in the growth year of the corn of the field, where it's at, what time of year they're getting in there, if they're getting in, at what stage of development of the corn. When is it that you're seeing most of the calls from folks to having problems?
Per se, two elk in the cornfields. Okay, on the row crop point is about when the corn starts getting tall enough to hide the elk. It's basically when they move in. That's when they start utilizing as a refuge. And then you start talking about pivoted cornfield. You have basically everything that elk needs there. It has security cover, it has food, it has water.
So do you do anything specific with that landowner initially? Does the landowner have to do anything? What do you do to try to move those elk out of there?
You bet with any point where based on the contact from the landowner, when they find them or have a damage with them, we continue to work with our outreach, letting landowners know to contact us. When they do start seeing them, a lot of them we do contact landowners we've worked with in the past who've had issues. We'll continue to reach out to them on that point, kind of keep everybody going on a timely manner. We'll work any way we can, especially on a field type situation like that. We'll try to work with them to haze them off. That point, we'll work with them at that time by either damage control permits if we don't have a season going on. If we have a season go on, we'll definitely work with them for hunters, doing hunt coordinations. If they're interested in getting hunters out there, we'll actually send hunters to them if they want to go that route. So yeah, we put a lot of pressure on them at any given time at that time frame.
Has there ever been some discussion of having, I'll say, professional shooters come out, say at night, if the herd's bedded down in an area out in the cornfield, to come in and just take out several?
I never say never. We always have different discussions like that, and that's an option that's on the table. Most people just do not want to take that step along that line.
Sir Brant?
Thank you, Chairman Bossman. Real quick, as a ag landowner who has this herd of elk in my irrigated corn that's worth $7 a bushel, green snapping it, because at that point you just touch a stalk, it goes over. Is the owner permitted to protect his property in any way, shape, or form? I mean, am I allowed to run those animals down the road away from my cornfield?
Yes, you're allowed to harass those animals as long as you physically don't touch them. We always recommend working through us along those situations because we're there to help and provide a lot of help along those ways with different depredation options too. But needless to say, yeah, we'll basically step point and put staff time in to help you fix your problem at that time.
And this is just ignorance on my part because we don't have many elk in southeast Nebraska. Does an elk go over a fence or through a fence?
It can do both.
All right, thank you.
Sir Jacobson?
One last question. I was raised earlier about how many people you've got out west. My understanding is you do have an office in North Platte. Is that correct?
We have an office in North Platte and we have an office out there in Alliance, yes.
And how many do you have employed in North Platte? How many people are there?
Exact office there, it ranges, to a few permanent staff for a wildlife side with temporaries, but we have additional satellite offices throughout on different wildlife management areas where we utilize those individuals also.
Do you count Rick Wyndham in that list, or is he kind of like where does he fit into all this equation?
No, Rick's not counted.
He's kind of a volunteer. Okay, good. That's good.
Sir Hughes?
Sorry, one more kind of question. I've been texting my brother about crop insurance. I think there would have to be something in here that if you get money from crop insurance, from your insurance, you wouldn't get money from the state. You know what I mean? We'd have to make sure that was, I guess that's a statement. Sorry. Yeah.
Seeing no other questions?
For the
Thank you.
notes, for the record.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony. Next opponent, please.
Good afternoon, Senator Bosman, members of the committee. My name is Scott Smathers, SCOTT, SMA, THERS. I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Sportsman's Foundation. And I'd like to start with, we do not oppose the bill as a depredation bill. Our membership base and our fellow sportsmen in the state have some questions about the structure of the bill. And in particular, the number one concern is obviously the possibility of loss of federal funds due to game cash being used as part of the practice. Obviously, that is something that's going to be looked into, figured out, and worked on, but we can't suffer that kind of loss as a general agency across the board, and sportsmen cannot lose that. I guess the crows come home to roost. As a sportsman, 10 years ago, I sat in this very room opposing Senator Chambers' bill to not list mountain lions as a wild game species. In fact, we did it 7 times. Well, they've grown to the numbers where now we have to talk about a depredation bill. That's good and bad. Same thing with elk. 10 years ago, it's hard to find that many elk in this state, but due to a lot of mitigating factors, neighboring states, their growth, wildfires, and quite frankly, fantastic habitat in the river valleys, our elk numbers have grown to the point where now there are landowners that are charging $500 a point for access. So you could spend $25,000 to shoot a quality 400+ elk in this state. We're growing. I was very pleased to hear Senator Brewer state that, and Senator Hughes just state that if there is a payment received to a landowner through leasing out his land or allowing access to his land, then they're not to participate in this program. The last 5 years, as some of you are the senior senators know, that we have worked on depredation issues quite extensively with former Senator Hughes. I have studied every state that Senator Brewer talked about. I have extensive notes. I've spent a tremendous amount of time with Idaho and Wyoming and Montana and Colorado officials looking at their programs. Sportsmen knew that at some point in this time, we were going to have to talk about serious depredation and ways to affect this depredational program to control the losses. The sportsmen, 62% of our membership base are ag producers. We're well aware of the situation, the issue. We do not object to a landowner charging somebody to come hunt a 400 class bull on their property. There are some sportsmen that have a very strong issue with that. They typically live within the same region where that landowner is charging that $500 a point or $7,500. And they can't get it. I'm 8 years trying to draw my bull permit in this state. I'll wait my turn. The reality is we know it has to happen. We're concerned about some of the structure of this bill. And quite frankly, I'm talking about elk. Mountain lion, I would just soon separate out and reduce the bill. We learned yesterday that simplicity is what passes bills. Remove the mountain lion. Quite frankly, there's some serious conversation around the state to just remove mountain lion as a wild game animal and make them a coyote. Quite frankly, and it probably wouldn't hurt a large portion of sportsmen in the state's mind, quite frankly. Mountain lions and elk are specialty hunts. Your average every Jimmy and Joe that hunts, like me, I want a bull elk, but I'll get it one time. I don't have any desire to hunt a mountain lion at all. Coyotes, I'll spend all weekend doing. So the sportsman standpoint is we have to have some program. We understand that. The reality is here. So the good problem is the numbers have gone up, the opportunities have gone up. The downside of it is we have depredation issues that have increased. Let's find a common ground program that works for everybody. And again, if a landowner is benefiting from those animals financially to cover crop loss, but then also wants a state reimbursement, I think we have some issues and concerns where we'll really have some problems. With that said, the sportsmen oppose this bill as it currently sits, but are willing and wanting to work on finding a common ground that works for everybody without losing federal funding. With that, I'll close and answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Next opponent, please. Anyone else want to testify as an opponent? Seeing none, anyone like to testify in the neutral capacity? Afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm going to try to redeem myself. Fourth time's a charm. I've had mountain lions on my farm ground. I have photographs of mountain lions walking over a wildlife area. They have caused no damage. My name is Michael Ryan, MICHAELRYAN. You brought up the point that could we use a helicopter to chase elk away? I personally witnessed UAVs being used to direct elk in Colorado. That is one way that you could avoid spending $10 million from the general fund. I think insurance, farm insurance would cover any damage, but it's personal ownership also. It's taking responsibility of your land and not asking the government to step in and pay for it. Like you can chase elk away. Back to the mountain lions, they travel the river. They come from Colorado. My research, there's 7,000 mountain lions in Colorado. They come down from the mountains. They come here looking for food. They come down here looking for breeding territory. They come down here just to see what Nebraska has to offer. They don't stick around in one place. They might take a pheasant, a rabbit, a goat, but they're not going to keep coming back to the same location. They are very skittish animals. They are very protective animals. They are lions. Think about the lions. They're not going to continually cause damage. My personal opinion is we should be feeding the mountain lions and we should be tagging them. We should be tracking them. There should be not a collar, but a digital device put on every mountain lion that we can get our hands on within the next 2 or 3 years. And we could visually track where these mountain lions are traveling to. From another meeting I've witnessed, State Patrol has the ability to monitor each one of their employees through the state via computer. If you can do that with a State Patrol agent, then you can do it with a mountain lion. or an elk. You can use the same technology with elk. In trying to fix the whole game and park situation, I'm going to refer to Aldo Leopold. He is the father of conservationism. He wrote the Sand County Almanac. And one of his quotes is, "Harmony with land is like harmony with a friend. You cannot cherish his right hand and chop off his left." During my research, I have also saw that there are 888 individuals who are registered to come in and be a lobbyist. It seems from what I've heard, Game and Parks is now acting as a lobbyist. You don't have general public out here. You have very few people coming up here to testify, which is a sad thing. But you have 888 lobbyists coming in here. I feel sorry for you in a way. And I feel sorry for myself because I know someday I'm going to be the guy sitting up there where you guys are trying to redirect it back out there. The Native Americans would be saddened by the way we treat animals, I think. There's different ways besides just killing an animal for trophy or for pride or for ego gratification. I mean, we could be setting up these photo traps where we actually invite mountain lions into an area using roadkill deer, using dead cattle from feedlots. You could bring in these mountain lions to certain areas and put all kinds of documentation devices into there. I think the problem with Game and Parks is they don't have the tools and they don't have the, they do a great job, but they don't have the tools, the resources, and the ability to make changes within their own department. And again, I'm going to go back to the point I made this morning. I think you should take the direction of Montana and North Dakota and split the Game and Parks into two divisions. The Nebraska Game and Fish and the Nebraska Parks. $10 million coming out of the general fund just to pay for insurance. That is not a smart idea in my book. That $10 million should go towards pheasants and pheasant programs or anything really. $10 million is a lot of money and you guys should be responsible with that. Like, don't just go killing all the wild animals. I've seen a mountain lion in captivity and I've seen a mountain lion 20 feet away from me myself. They're beautiful creatures. Like, we should be cherishing those. We should have more of them, but we should manage them. With elk, I think you can be making more money as an organization by selling more elk permits, and elk taste delicious. Thank you for your time. No question. Thank you.
Any other, anyone else like to testify in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, Mr. Brewer, welcome to close. And as Senator Brewer comes up, we have 4 proponents and 14 opponent letters.
Okay, well, the gentleman was just here, which I'll refer to as Mr. Neutral. Wow. Yesterday, I was making arrangements with the National Guard to gun down coyotes. And today, I'm trying to figure out how to coddle a mountain lion, so a little bit perplexed here. And I don't want to sell my native credentials over this, okay? Understand, I'm here because the people of my district are hurt. They got a problem, and that's my job. So it's not about where I come from or anything about me. It's about trying to take these people that have lost hope and say, you know what? We live in the middle of nowhere, and no one gives a damn because if you look between Steve Erdman and myself, we have got from just west of O'Neill to the Wyoming border, from South Dakota all the way to Highway 2. A good share of what they're responsible for that has the most activity. Now, I will look forward to making a trip out and doing a head count, see how many Game and Parks folks I can find in some of these locations. But I think you'll be shocked at how many are here in Lincoln and how few are out there, and yet most of the problems are out there. I did exactly what I said yesterday. As soon as I walked out of here, I co-sponsored Steve Erdman's bill to move Game and Parks to Sydney. Now, I understand. It's an act of frustration because I got to figure out how to go back, look those people in the eye, and tell them, listen, if we do anything, there's a chance that Game and Parks might lose some of their federal money. Their shadow program, if we touch or do anything, they lose $20 million and the world ends tomorrow. Now, when we designed the bill, we didn't put dollar figures in there, and the idea was to keep from touching this program. But that's what they throw out there, because they want to scare everybody in this room into saying, we just leave them alone. Well, here's the truth about Game and Parks. It's an inbred society of folks that never change. No fresh ideas. They do this go along, get along, and people are discouraged. This mountain lion incident, the reason they didn't want them out there, because they were so pissed off at them because of the way they were treated and the way they treated the incident, they didn't want them there. When you invite a federal government official and the sheriff because you're so mad at a state agency, we failed. We have done something wrong. I believe that if they really wanted to fix this, if we really wanted to come up with a solution, before we ever talked about pheasant restoration, before we ever talked about depredation with elk, they would come in and sit down with the senator and say, listen, we've got these studies, and we got some ideas on how we might do it better. And here's some ideas on how we might tweak our depredation program. But if you don't want the bill to pass, you ignore the senator, you come in, you figure out a way to put so much money in a fiscal note that it's dead, or you figure out how to send in folks who should be coming in neutral. If they're from the executive branch, now you can put a more negative twist to it, but they figured out how to just continue to do what they're doing. That's by intimidating these folks that get to make the decisions on what we're going to do here. But at some point, something has to break this cycle. Someone has to say, you know what, this is not working, and we got to figure out a solution. Now, maybe that is an interim study where we just go from top to bottom and tear apart the seams, fish and wildlife, and figure out our fish and game, figure out what's going on. I don't know what the answer is, but to continue to kick the can down the road, these people that have depredation problems, whether it be a mountain lion or an elk, are getting frustrated. Now, I did get a comment from one lady, and she goes, I think it's brilliant. Turn mountain lions into coyotes. That's their attitude out there. And we got to make sure and give them some hope for the future, because I believe at some point they will become so discouraged that they're going to take things into their own hands, and they're going to do their own depredation. And when they do that is not the way to go. But I think that you will reach a level of frustration that they will go that far. So let's try and figure out a solution. And then I'm open for amendments, for ideas on how to tweak this. But to come in here and bury it with a fiscal note and speak against it in the opponent category is wrong. Open for questions.
Sarah Hughes.
You know me. Thank you, Chairman. So, no, clearly this is a big issue. If I heard right, the depredation special unit or commission was started in spring of 2021. Is that 21? Yes. Okay. So new, do you think that was the right course of action? And I'm just asking, have we given it enough time with what happened at Perkins? Do we feel like that was good? I mean, does that seem like it's going in the right direction or not?
Well, I think it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were late to get that program going. I think there was a lot of problems years before that, which has only compounded things now.
Right.
I was not a part of what happened with Perkins County, but I blindly trust Senator Jacobson that if he was there and he liked what he saw, I think it's going in the right direction. But that's 30,
Right.
of over 1,000, probably closer to 2,000. So, and most of those are farther out there where we're talking about these more severe problems. And I think since Tom Brandt's one of the few that really can get a visual of what a cornfield looks like after a few hundred elk come through it, we've got to be reasonable about how we handle this. And I don't think we're there. I don't think you can hand out permits is compensation for destruction. And who should make the decision on how much destruction there is? I don't think should come from Game and Parks. I think they're going to have a natural bias not to be fair in how much is given. So that part, we have to figure out, what right looks like when it comes to that compensation for the damages.
Okay, thank you.
Sir Mosher.
Did you figure out if crop insurance covers elk damage?
The folks that I have talked to say that their insurance will not let them write off that level of crop damage. And I don't know policies where they write in there that you can have destruction by, by herds of elk and then be compensated for that destruction. But I mean, I could specifically ask them if that is a part of anybody's
I'm
policy.
just curious, crop insurance covers against hail, wind, all those sorts of things. And you can buy a certain percentage. You don't have to insure your whole crop. You can insure part of it. Maybe we should come up with an insurance program against elk damage.
That'd be a state program?
Well, you wouldn't want the state. I can tell you.
Okay, I don't know that you're going to see insurance companies come very quick to embrace that, or if they did, there would be such a cost to it that it wouldn't make it profitable for the landowner. I mean, I think you can
The
insurance a
would be
person to
too
death.
expensive.
I would guess. I'm not an insurance agent. And I don't know how they figure that, but I got a hunch if you're anywhere where there are elk and then you want an insurance policy to compensate you for elk damage, you're going to pay a pretty high price.
Well, some places have higher hail insurance factors because they get a lot of hail claims.
Well,
Anyway, thank you.
Sir Brad.
Thank you, Chairman Bosselman. Thank you for your closing. To put this in perspective, in southeast Nebraska, we don't have elk, we've got Angus cows. And what happens about August is your fence is too close to your neighbor's cornfield. And so if my cows get out in your cornfield, my farm policy, not my crop insurance, pays you for the damage. And depending on the level of damage, if it's a low level, they kind of take both of our word for it. If I'm saying it's $500 and my neighbor's saying it's $5,000, they send an adjuster out. But it's the owner of the damaging livestock that is responsible for that. And it appears to me, because the state of Nebraska is the owner of the damaging livestock here, there is no compensation from the commercial insurance industry is kind of how I read this. How do you read it, sir?
well, I would read it that way too. And we can't take an attitude that this is just too hard. The landowners need to just deal with it. They need to suck it up. I mean, that's what I hear. And that ain't right. And that ain't fair. What Game and Parks should be coming here and doing is saying, listen, we got to figure out ways to solutions, ways to fix these issues, not just throw up a barrier saying this is the way we've done it. This is the way it is. And if we change it, we don't get federal money. So it is what it is. That isn't the attitude we ought to be hearing from them.
Seeing no other questions.
All right, thank you.
I'll close our hearing on LB 456. We will have an exec session now.
That's all.